Okay, so I'll do a roll call vote. Madonna,
Aye, here.
Milena,
Here.
Richard Geiler,
Here.
Ann,
Here.
and Phil Orenstein is here as well. Committee member announcements or statements. And
I just want to let folks know I cannot make the scheduled April meeting. I'm traveling. I'll be on a plane then, so.
okay, we'll come back to that. Do you recall when that April meeting is?
I think it's April, what's it? 19th. It is April 16th.
April
So.
16th. Okay, we'll come
I
back.
will also be in Ireland.
Oh,
Yeah, and I'm gonna be also traveling.
all right. So it
Oh,
sounds like
no
that's
quorum.
not a great day. All right, we'll come back to that. Okay, is everyone, one very, very minor announcement, but just the guide to the tax bill that we worked on a little while back is actually now on the Finance Committee page on the website.
Wonderful.
So
Yeah.
thanks to everyone for their help on that and to the town staff for doing that. So we'll move to approval of the minutes, and that's a mouthful tonight.
Well, I think, do you want to start? Well, I think first on the agenda is the Finance Committee from December and January minutes.
Motion to approve December Finance Committee.
That's the
Minutes.
Second.
That's the December 19th meeting. Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, roll call vote. Ann,
Aye.
Madonna,
Aye.
Milena,
Aye.
Richard,
Aye.
and it is unanimous for the December 19th minutes. And we'll have to do them individually because of various people weren't at certain meetings. So on Wednesday, January 17th, that's a regular finance committee meeting. Do we
I
have a
have a-
motion?
Yeah, sorry.
Do we
I
have a
have
motion? Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I have a change for that for those minutes.
Okay.
And it was just trying to find exactly where it was. It was related to the discussion about the Community Preservation Committee committee proposal. And I just wanted to add that at that meeting, I raised my concern over the recommended grant to Marble Block Realty because those rent savings were not properly valued. And so the value, the actual financial value of those savings is about 1/3 less than the amount that the Community Preservation Committee is proposing, they're recommending. So
Milena, is this point, are we in section number 5?
it's
Yes.
section number 5, yes.
What do you want me to add in here?
I just what I was saying, you can rephrase it, but basically the point there is that the proposed grant to Marble Block Realty hasn't been, properly discounted, and the actual value of those future earnings is about 1/3 less than the proposed grant.
Okay, so Milena, do you think you could send me a sentence?
I will send you the word.
I can't type at the speed.
That's fine. Yeah,
So-
I will be able to do that. Yeah.
Okay,
Can I do it after the meeting?
I'm fine with that if others
Yep.
are.
I think that's fine, but just right after the meeting, so it doesn't get lost, please send
I
her
will
that.
do that. Yes, that's totally fine. Yeah, thank you.
Just as a general matter, we welcome the comments, but anything more than a word or two, please just go ahead and send it on an email so we get it straight. Any other comments on January 17th minutes? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote as amended by Milena. Ann?
Aye.
Madonna?
Oh, we didn't have a first or a second, as I recall.
You have a motion.
Oh,
Very
We
good.
didn't have a motion.
no, sorry. Thanks, Madonna. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of gosh, what's the date? Of
January 17th.
January 17th as amended with Melena's statement.
Do we have a
Second.
second?
Second,
Great, okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Anne,
Aye.
Madonna,
Aye.
Richard,
Aye.
Milena?
aye.
It is unanimous. Stick to that last change. And then we'll skip ahead past the budget. To the minutes of the first joint budget meeting. And that is the February 6th meeting. And on those minutes, I have a comment that in that third paragraph on page 1, I'm going to ask Stacy, who does the minutes for us, does a great job, and ask her to include that full statement that I read at the meeting about my my role with the Community Development Corporation and potential conflicts. So I sent her my full statement. I'm going to ask her to put that in. Any further comments on this first meeting? Seeing none.
I'll
We have
make a motion. Yep, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the budget meeting on February 6th, 2024.
And including my amendment.
With amended with your comments, yes.
Right. We have a
Second.
second, right? Any
Second.
further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Milena,
Aye.
Richard,
I cannot vote on this one since I was not present.
that is a good reason. Anne
Aye.
and Madonna.
Aye.
Okay, so it's unanimous with one absentee. So those are approved. That's Feb 6. Okay. We go to February the 7th. And Mr. Giley was absent as well. Do we have any comments on, well, do we have any comments on the meeting of February 7th minutes?
I'd like to make a motion. Can I make a motion that we approve the minutes of February 7th budget meeting?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Milena,
Aye.
Richard, I presume you will recuse? Okay,
I think I have to since I was not
I think that's a
present.
good reason. Yes, I think
I
you have,
listened, but I think it's best for the people that are there.
and I think it's more of an abstain than a recuse.
Yes, yes.
Madonna,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
and I'm aye as well. Okay, so those are approved. And we go to February 13. Again, quite an undertaking to get these minutes done. Do we have a motion or do we have any comments?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes for the February 13th, 2024 budget meeting.
And a second? Sorry, did I hear a second? Sorry.
Yes, I second.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Anne,
Aye.
Madonna,
Aye.
Milena,
Aye.
Mr. Geiler, I believe you will abstain,
Staying.
and I will approve as well. February 13th approved. All righty. And we go to February 14. Okay, recusal there. Were
These, I mean,
voluminous, but they were very
Yeah.
accurate.
I have to say, I mean, I let's make a comment in general. I thought the minutes were incredibly accurate.
Yeah, I think the minutes were more accurate than the meeting actually was. I think.
Yeah, right, right, yeah.
All right, so- all right,
The only, The only thing I just want to highlight here, and make sure, I mean, we did vote for some community impact funding, but then we didn't vote at the hearing, so I'm assuming at this point, we don't have to undo a vote.
Yes, very good point. That might have come up later, but yes,
Yeah.
on the community impact fee topic, which we may come back to, because a certain member, myself, had to recuse. We did not have three
Right.
people to approve it, so it never was approved.
Right,
It was approved by the select board, and they have, at their last meeting, they reversed that recommendation to include that warrant for the community, for the 1.5 million of community impact fees.
Yeah.
So that is not being recommended. So any further comments on Feb 14 meetings, on the Feb 14 minutes, rather? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of February 14th budget meeting.
Second?
Second,
Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Anne?
Aye.
Madonna?
aye.
Richard will abstain. Milena?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well, so those are approved. Then we go to February 20.
I move that we approve the minutes for February 20th joint select board and finance committee meeting on
Second.
February 20th.
Second,
Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote. Anne?
aye.
Madonna?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Milena?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Just here we have February 28.
I was not there on February 28th, so I will not vote on this.
Yeah, I was not there either. Yeah.
I move that we approve the finance committee public hearing and select board and finance committee joint fiscal year 25 budget meeting of February 28th.
And I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Okay. Okay, actually got that right too. Okay, seeing none, roll call vote. Anne?
Aye.
Madonna, you were there? Yes.
I was not there on February
Was not-
28th.
So who was there? I was there. I'm approving it.
Just-
I was there, you were there. and
Oh,
yeah.
okay, gotcha. All right. Okay, so Rich was there. You're a yes as well? Okay, so
Yes.
we have 3 yeses, so these minutes are approved.
Talk about voluminous, yes.
Yes, I was, well, it was a voluminous evening.
That's
I think that's it, right? Did I get them all?
it.
Yes, they are
Okay,
complete.
terrific.
That's
All right.
all minutes.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you again to Stacy for their terrific work.
Yeah.
Okay, now we go to the town manager and or the finance manager update.
I just have two very, very brief updates. One you've already touched on, so thank you. I just wanted, in case anyone missed it, just wanted to share the news that the select board did rescind the vote on March 25th to support the $1.5 million special article. So nothing more to say about that. It's pending litigation, so I'll stop there. The only other thing I wanted to mention tonight is that we staff are working on drafting the town meeting warrant and all the motions associated with that warrant right now. And the select board will be approving that warrant on the 22nd. So we're closing in on it. Just wanted to let you know that we'll be sharing that with you shortly.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
then I guess all I wanted to tell you was that I will be updating the budget link on our website with that 1.5 taken out, so that will be the most up-to-date, accurate. It'll be out there the next couple days.
Wonderful.
Okay, Anne, did you want to make any specific comments on the budget report that you have in the packet?
The budget report that I have in the packet. What?
the budget,
Oh, you mean the
budget,
January?
Allison's budget report
Yeah,
through January
yeah.
31.
Yeah, so, and Allison, I know you sent around some, more updated
Mhm.
from March. I guess I'm just wondering, maybe if we can talk about the places where it's already over 100%. And I think we did talk about one of again, I think it's the, salt,
Yeah.
and snow again, water and sewer. And remind me did we talk about the longevity in the town clerk? Which is over, is that, I can't remember if we've talked about that before. And and I haven't had a chance to look at the March ones,
I believe, I'm going back a little bit, but I believe that that was the amounts changed in the longevity, correct, Mark, in the last year?
Yes, they did. That's probably just a miscalculation
oh,
for one of either the clerk or the town clerk, who moved up a year
okay.
in fiscal 24.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's already been corrected. The transfer's already taken place.
Okay, all
I
right.
think every one of the categories in our collective bargaining agreements increased by $100. So non-union personnel received the same increase this year.
Okay.
There was also a line called allocation from WW, which is way over, and I don't know what, I mean, I don't understand that accounting there, to tell you the truth, because it's a negative and then it becomes
So
less negative.
that's the wastewater allocation.
And
And that's
what
done
was the-
twice a year. So that's done in December and in June. So that's why you see only half of it's moved.
Right, and what do you mean by allocation? I don't really understand the accounting. there.
It's for services funded by the general fund that the enterprise fund pays back, basically.
I
So
still
for
don't
example,
understand.
human resources, a percentage of that is paid back from the wastewater
Oh, I see.
account.
Okay,
It's
so this is a
allocated.
So
Yep.
this is a transfer coming back to the town?
Yeah, it basically works as an offset in the
Okay,
end.
all right, okay.
You'll
Thank
see
you.
it in the wastewater, you'll see it as an expense, and then in
And
the
then it's
general
gonna
fund, you'll see it
be on
as a
the other
credit.
end. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Allison, I just had a very quick comment, but looking back at the fiscal year end report you sent a
Mhm.
month or two ago, and I'm not, it's okay if you don't have it memorized. But I think I just want to make sure that it shows that the actual utilized amount or expended amount of the budget in total was 91.5% of the approved budget. And so,
Yeah.
and again, I'm not asking you to memorize that. I'm looking at it right now. But I just
I guess, and
I
Phil,
wanted to bring that up as sort of a notable item and a positive one, and meant that, you know, basically the town's budget came in under budget, you know, by is that 8.5% for fiscal year end 23. There's a whole array of factors that cause that. You know, some again, well, there's an array of factors that cause that, but I just want to highlight that number and make sure that I'm sort of reading that right.
Yeah, I believe that you're correct. That would be the reason for the departmental turnbacks. If there's vacancies, if we talked about this in the budget hearings, if
Right.
there is a vacancy for any portion of the year, that money's turned back. If there's a project or an item that was going to be purchased that was decided not to, then that would be turned back as well. So that basically amounts to the turn back that eventually becomes free cash.
Right, right.
So, Ali, what you are really saying, a lot of it is really due to timing as opposed to any
A lot of times, yeah.
structural changes there.
Yeah, a
Okay.
lot of times it's that, and like I said, the vacancies, if there's, you know, a
Mhm.
department that has an opening for several months, they're gonna turn that back.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think to me, it's the vacancies are the big cause of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Ashley, if there's no further comment on that, do you see Chief Turner out there?
Can I just circle back around for 1 second? With
Please.
the community impact funding of 1.5 million not being in the special articles, does that mean that the free cash is going to be that much larger since we're not going to be taking?
That would just be that would just be the cannabis portion. So remember
Yeah,
the page
that's-
where I have the breakdown of the free
Right,
cash
okay.
that's general fund and the cannabis. So it'll just go back into that bucket. So our free cash general fund is going to stay the same.
Or unrestricted free cash.
Yes. So
Okay.
I did make a correction to that page. So you'll see it when I put it out on the web. I'll send you guys all in email to let you know when it's available.
Okay, all right. No,
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Okay,
So-
so,
yep.
okay, Chief Turner, thanks for joining us tonight. I think you have a Finance Committee reserve request on the docket tonight. Is there anything you'd like to sort of tell us about that request?
Sure. The money that we're requesting, the transfer for covers 4 of our apparatus, and one of them is, $2,200 for our engine 3. There's a issue with the inner air cooler, which cools the air before it gets into the turbo. And if that were to not happen properly, then it could, ruin the engine, which would probably be a $25,000 repair. The other one is for engine 2. It has a leak in the fuel cell, and that's 5,000. Ladder 1, there's items in the rear called torque rods. And what that's for is kind of keeping it aligned, the rear end, because it's such a large piece of apparatus. When it turns corners, it can go out of alignment. And that was $1,800. And for our brush truck, we have 1 tire that needs to be replaced. And that's $800 for that.
Okay. In case anyone is looking for it, it's the last page in the packet, which is the reserve fund transfer request.
And all of those individual repairs add up to approximately the $10,000 figure.
It comes up to $9,800.
Right.
And we're just trying to have a little bit of room just in case the price of the labor ends up being more.
Okay, well, hopefully the $200 is enough. Doesn't seem like
Yeah.
that's
Much of a
not-
cushion.
Okay, well, you know, seems very appropriate. Does anyone have any further comments on this one?
I just want to ask a question about a tire. I know when we change our tires in our car and we have a blowout, often we need extra tires, because of tread wear and stuff. Is that a potential problem with the tire you need?
The tires are pretty good, and generally with the brush truck, they don't go out a lot, so the tires can last a little bit longer. I don't believe a spare was ever purchased. They didn't have any issues prior to this. It was the steel wall, the wiring inside the tire that failed.
Okay,
So I don't know that we would need to purchase a additional tire in the future.
okay. I was just saying it because you're asking for it, and I thought, well, if you needed 2 tires, I don't know how many tires you need for your truck, but I was just wondering if that was an issue.
We're not anticipating that it will be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
Go in.
I'll make a motion that we approve the reserve transfer request of $10,000 from the reserve fund to the fire department. Repair and maintenance.
Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Anne,
Aye.
Madonna,
Aye.
Elena,
Aye.
Richard,
Aye.
and it's unanimous. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay. All right, so I'm going to item 7 on the agenda. That is the somewhat open-ended discussion of our recently completed budget meetings. Anne, did you have any comments you wanted to make there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think I'm the one who put this on the agenda, and I think just often when we have the budget season, we get to the end of it and we're so exhausted from it that we don't often take the time to reflect on what worked and what didn't work. And so I thought it would be good to do this. I also will say, I guess I'll just be really upfront and say, I was struck by how many other committees or programs or departments came to us and said, well, here's our 5-year plan and here's what we feel is needed. And it just struck me that as the finance committee, we just end up being sort of very reactive versus thinking about, well, what would be our goals in terms of the town's budget and finances. So, and again, I'm not saying that I have the answer tonight. That's not at all, but that I do think thinking about, well, how do we start thinking about how we get a handle on, the tax rate, which is part of, at least my understanding of one of the charges to the finance committee, which is balancing what the town needs and what the services we want to offer while maintaining a tax rate that people can still afford to live here. So I just think thinking about how we do this, and, in some ways, I think it was, Mark came to us at the very start of the meetings and saying, this is and will be a very difficult budget season. But we sort of found ourselves really sort of trying to manage this really high increase in expenses in the budget of, and we came in at 12.9 and we were able to get it down to 12.03, which with a lot of hard work, but I actually did a lot of analysis after looking at, how much we were really trying to sort of, and I'm sure Mark and Ally can agree, we were cutting in really small, we're cutting departments with really small budgets when more than about half of the budget increase this year is in interest and principal payments and borrowing. Then there's the salary increases that are contracted, so we had no room to move there. So I was looking, it was about, 1/4 of the total budget was what we were working with. And there was a lot in there we didn't feel we could cut. So I just think, how do we not find ourselves in the same place again next year? And one big way, I think, is trying to get a handle on borrowing. So I just want to reflect on what worked. And I guess I will say, I do wonder if we can get some, earlier warnings about if we're going to be working with such a difficult budget. I don't know when this was getting to be clear that this is what we were going to be looking at. And if we're looking at such a difficult budget, to maybe plan for, more time between when we get the booklet and the first meeting. So those of us who are on the committee have more time to sift through the booklet, or maybe have Mark, your sort of general presentation, and then a little more time to sift through what that all means. So anyway, I just thought it'd be worth us talking, because we didn't have a chance to talk about the process during the process very much.
Point well taken, and thank you for bringing all that up. I think one idea that I would raise for discussion is, one thing I noticed is that there's a lot of very important context, particularly on a lot of the capital spending projects that are on the drawing board, that are discussed in fairly extensive detail at the select board. I think it's the priority and planning session, if I'm getting it right. And, I think that, and again, I'm getting my dates wrong, but it happened a month or two before the budget process began, if I'm remembering it correctly.
January and June.
Okay.
We have 2 sessions a year.
Okay. So the January session in particular, I saw a part of it as a observer. I think in retrospect, there was a lot of information there that may have been helpful context background for some of the budget discussion, particularly from Department of Public Works. Joe Aberdale did kind of a pretty rigorous walkthrough of building by building, if I remember
Mm.
correctly, what he's working on and what he feels is important. So what I would throw out there as an idea for the future for next year is one alternative is we all tune in on that and watch it. And then, or we could ask to make at the other end of the spectrum, we could ask to make that some type of joint session so that we would have the ability to ask questions to the presenters
Yeah.
there. But it is the select board's meeting, so it's really it's not our thing. But again, I think as a practical matter, I think a lot of very important information was shared there.
I would just add, I mean, I totally agree with what Phil is saying and what Anne. And to me, really, the capital expenditure budget, that's the biggie, right? I mean, we have two things there. The salary is pretty much, a lot of it is out of our hands, but the capital expenditure and the borrowing cost, that's something that we need to focus on, as opposed to spending time, going through $100 here and $100 there. And Phil, I think, made a very important point here. We have to be part of it. I mean, whether we are sitting on the meeting, but that information really needs to be shared with us, because frankly, going through the process, as difficult as it was, I didn't really feel I knew enough. And I did ask a lot of questions, and Joe is extremely helpful and extremely knowledgeable and all that, but there is not enough time. And we are making some very important decisions, during those meetings. And I would also echo what Anne was saying. I really don't feel it is reasonable to expect people get a book, which is a very detailed book, because you guys spend a lot of time on it and you understand every number, but we see it for the first time. So it is really important that we have these budget books, at least I would say a week, maybe 10 days before the first meeting, so we can come to the meeting prepared properly and we better use the time there. Because I think we need to, the budget isn't gonna be very time consuming every year, one way or the other. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. But I think focusing on the strategic parts of it, as Phil was saying, is really, really critical, and having enough information and understanding of what is really happening in this town, and then having enough time to really read through those numbers and analyze them properly, be prepared for the meeting. And I think both of them should be, things that we can do. I don't really see any reasons why we couldn't, make those modifications. But I think it would really, really improve the process greatly, at least for me. Yeah.
I felt very shocked by the first couple meetings, and by the third meeting, I specifically was asking for just a finance committee meeting, because I don't want to hurt people that have worked, like Joe Aberdale or any of the people, the presenters for their departments. They've worked very hard. And when we start questioning, it almost feels like it could be perceived that either we're distrustful or, we're second guessing them. But the flaw I see is when we have a joint meeting that is the select board and the finance committee, the basic is that the select board has the talking stick. And it's a lot different than having a forum, just like we're doing right now, where we can just kind of discuss things. And it doesn't mean to say other select board members can't be listening in and as participants and join in with their hand raised. It really struck me as very, very difficult, and I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And yet there was just so much information. I think we just didn't get enough time to process how extensive this budget was going to be.
Yeah, I well, it certainly was a lot of information, and as I think I said, I don't know what I said because it was a lot of meetings, but it is, when we're in a position where we're sort of questioning whether or not Joe's guys need a new shovel here and there. It's not very productive.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and in terms of, you know, the actual cost to the taxpayer, it really, I agree, it really is in the capital budget. So for example, you know, the big swing factor was the $3-odd million renovation of South Main Street.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you know, it might have been helpful. Again, I'm not second guessing, but you know, it's a big number. So if we have more time to sort of know that that's sort of on the drawing board and get kind of an earlier heads up on sort of the thinking there, and you know, that might be helpful. So I guess what I would propose is I could uh be very informal. I would vote that I would not vote. I'm going to suggest that I basically have a phone conversation with Steve and just mention this conversation about that January planning. And again, I think the easy solution is we all just sort of get some popcorn and tune into that meeting. But it might be a little more helpful if you know, if we could participate in it, or we could also just observe it and then ask questions. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I don't know how different it's going to be, but I'll run it by him, and I'm sure he'll have some important points to bring up on that. You know,
Richard, has your hand up?
I'm trying to say, when can I speak? I think the biggest thing that was a red flag for me was, I believe that the Department of Public Works is doing a bang-up job and trying to look at all of the things that ought to be done in the best possible way. His plan over the next 5 years is very full and complete and very expensive. I think that the plan that he had in the packet we were looking at, you know, it looks like next year is expected to be an ask of 29 million in borrowing. And to me, I think that we need to have a realistic expectations of what would be an acceptable level of borrowing going forward. And I think it may be difficult to decide that some things have to be band-aided and some things have to be put off, but that the amount of borrowing in a particular year, there has to be some extremely egregious need to have an amount that large in a year and see that it's not going to throw everything off. You know, if we're looking at a new school in the future, that is an example of an item that is a one-off that is very important and has to be discussed as a huge borrowing thing. But all of these fixes that are going on in the town, I think that not only the assessment of what is most important to do, but also the assessment of what is possible to do and fund in a particular year is an important one to keep in mind. Because if we come to the next meeting and we have a budget presented to us that has that many millions of dollars in requests for borrowing, I do not believe that will move forward from my perspective. I don't know if other people have another way of looking at it, but I'm just saying that that one has to keep in mind what is possible as far as borrowing limits may be concerned. That's all I'll say.
Just for context, the capital budget for this year, fiscal 25, was in the $22-24 million range originally. And I feel pretty certain that whether it's me or someone else sitting in this chair, you're not going to see a $29 million capital request come before you in any fiscal year.
But the 5-year plan that remained a part of the packet looked like whatever was rightfully put off by your office was just moved 1 year over.
Absolutely.
And
So-
I'm just saying that isn't looking to me like everyone is on the same idea, that we have to start looking at more long-range projections. It can't be a 5-year plan. It has to be a longer year plan with those. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It looks like, okay, we put it off this year, and next year we're going to have to do the hard budget. But that's not what you're just saying. What you're just saying is that isn't your contemplated move forward for next year. So it would be good not to present that as a 5-year plan moving forward.
So I have a question here actually for Mark.
Have we discussed enough that particular issue, or is there anything more that anyone wants to say? I'm sorry, Milena, but is there more that anyone wants to say about considering a limit on the amount of requested borrowing each year?
Well, I'm not ready to talk about a limit, but what I would say is that there's an enormous amount of give and take
Right,
and
yeah.
negotiation that goes on between Mark and all the departments and on the operating budget and the capital budget part. And one aspect always jumps out is that, we probably don't give enough credit to Mark for sort of controlling all the spending prior to the numbers that we see in the budget book. So I think that he, if taxpayers are concerned about frivolous spending, it would probably behoove us to sort of make that part of the process a little more apparent, or just a little more.
It was certainly very clear to me, Mark, that your work on that was very diligent and very forward-looking, and we all appreciated it tremendously.
Yep.
All I'm saying is that there remained the impression from me that moving forward, we were just kicking the bucket only a year or 2 years down the road, and that discussions perhaps have to be a little deeper at long-range planning.
So if I may add to it, because I really want to ask this question. So Mark, I know when we spoke and you really went through the budget and you made some very significant cuts and, and did a lot of work basically for us that way. But where I'm a little bit surprised is that there is this kind of a big difference between what Joe sees and what you see. And I don't know if it's a fair assessment, but he somehow has a vision of what the town needs. And I'm sure, he's aiming for the best job and keeping the town in a really tip-top shape and everything. And then you come in and you are trying to do lots of other things, not only just kind of keeping, the infrastructure in tip-top shape. But the question is, where I am really what I'm kind of lacking is to really understand, okay, when he says during the budget conversation, he says, if we are not gonna pursue this particular maintenance plan, then means that the costs will increase, 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. I don't really have a good feel for it. I'm not a building expert. And I see this kind of a difference to a degree between you and him. And I was just wondering, I mean, can we have like a better sense of what really, really is absolutely necessary, and what, maybe Steve made a point also, maybe some of the buildings should be sold because maybe the town doesn't necessarily need them. But it seems to me that the capital expenditure is going to kill us going forward, one way or the other. And I don't really, and I don't have a good handle on it, and I'm really concerned about it. And so I would kind of want to hear from you. I mean, where do you see, because you work with Joe and you work with the teams, where do you see is the healthy, medium there, where that the town really needs to pursue, and we really have the financial resources to do so? Because I kind of feel we are on two different tracks here.
So real briefly, I think we've, as a team here, identified a number of capital needs over the next 5-10 years. What we're working with is a 5-year capital plan. But that $24 to $29 million number, that's us here basically putting together an inventory of capital needs across the town, the things that we see. Where we start to really get down into the details is when we meet as a team. I meet with Joe, I meet with Chris, I meet with Ally, and we start to each budget year look at everything that we see coming down the road at us, and we try to focus on just the high priority items. So that's where we are looking at the select board's priority planning list. We're looking at our roads, streets and roads asset management plan. We're looking at our buildings management plan, and we're trying to put together the best approach for the coming season within reason. So we're not, coming at you with something, a budget so large that clearly wouldn't pass the finance committee, select board, or town meeting. So.
But do you feel what Joe was saying is that we don't really pursue those projects this year? We will most likely end up as a high because 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. I mean, do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
Well-
So basically it is really kind of delaying the inevitable here in a way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
We
I
have,
mean, I
Yeah.
came away from the, if you don't mind if I jump in, I mean, I came away from this year's budget meeting thinking we've got a problem, which was we have a lot of deferred maintenance. We haven't created significant reserve funds to help with the big expenses. And so we're really in a bind. And I do think Mark, it might be helpful that if next year's budget comes again with a capital budget of 10 million, and again, we're not even talking about the school here, that there's a list that the priorities are ranked for us at that time. I mean, that we didn't have to sort of, send Joe back or Chris back to say, okay, what are the priorities? I also think, I really feel, I mean, I know there's many advantages aesthetically and in terms of our control to do some of these capital projects in-house and pay for them ourselves. But I guess I just feel, looking at where things are going, we cannot afford to bypass the possibility of state or federal funding for any project. And if there's an option of getting state help, I think we should pursue that. So I just feel like, maybe it's something we could really focus on as a committee, is trying to get a handle on the borrowing. I mean, I think, Richard, you were saying about, should we set some cap? I was thinking about some sort of like rolling average idea. It's not like every year can only be something, but we have to there might be years when there's less borrowing and there might be years when there's more. It doesn't look like we're going to have a less for a long time, but I just think we have to try to set some controls on the borrowing, or we're just always going to be coming and we have, there's hardly anything to be done about the budget. It is what it is, and and as interest rates go up, I think this is only going to get more difficult.
Well, I don't think we
Allison.
really have we don't
Go ahead,
really
go ahead.
have much of control really, because when I think everyone mentioned here, given the amount of fixed costs there, so the leverage we have over the budget is very limited. So, that kind of, in my mind, it brings up the issue that maybe something more significant has to happen, really, because otherwise we will be again discussing $100 expenses. Yeah, sorry, Phil.
No problem. Allison, one other request, and or really more of an idea is I tried to do some very crude projections of our interest line item for next year. I wonder if you could explore, and this is probably would be relying on what I believe is the third-party municipal bond consultant that works with the town on all its offerings and and the terms and provisions and maturities and interest costs there. And they have it all spread out in an enormous spreadsheet. Could you just have a discussion with them about their ability to provide either us or the joint budget committee with some type of earlier projection of interest costs for the coming year as part of the budget process? And again, there's always implicit in that is all sorts of assumptions and simplifying assumptions about new borrowings and interest rates.
Yeah,
But
I think that would be really difficult unless you had some sort of a limit that you said X dollars. I think it's hard. I guess that's probably what I would say, is that we'd have to probably decide a dollar amount, and then I can go from there. Because
Well,
that's really what it's all built on.
Another way to look at that is that without going into newly approved capital spending, would it be possible for us to get a earlier version of the projected interest expense for fiscal year 26, several months in advance of the budget process? Because as I understand it, most of that is, sort of tucked away in bed. And we would be able to get a pretty good vision into what those interest expenses are earlier than the receipt of the budget book. Again, I'm throwing that out there as an idea for discussion. I'm not close enough to this to really know if that's viable or not.
Yeah, I think honestly, to be honest, it's not so much the interest line item, it's the principal
Oh
payments.
yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I
That's-
completely agree. Point well taken. You understand
Yeah.
correctly. So it's the debt service line is what I should be saying.
Yeah, so which is also based on how much is borrowed, so
Right.
that,
So
I guess.
so there's a
if I
big
could get
chunk of
some-
that is sort of contractually locked in much earlier than a point in time when we're receiving that budget binder.
Mhm.
So it just, again, just in the general category of trying to get an earlier look at some of these big chunky variables that really drive the bus, it would be great to get an earlier look at that as opposed to the sticker shock that we all had when we got the book.
I think that's a great idea. Mhm.
Ali, I have a question. So how do you actually manage that whole process throughout the year?
So the way it works is after the authorization is approved by town meeting, the project can move forward and essentially deficit spend. At the end of the year, by June 30th, we have to do a borrowing, either a temporary or a permanent borrowing, because we don't want to have a deficit. That'll take money off of our free cash. So we will normally do a temporary borrowing in June to get us over that hump, and then reevaluate the projects, because you don't want to do a permanent bond on a
Right,
project
unless
that's
you-
not completed yet,
Right.
or at least a phase of it is completed. So that's
So are
kind
you
of,
doing it- I'm sorry, are you doing it on a monthly basis, or you are making projections as to the amount that needs to be borrowed, whether permanently or temporarily? I mean, how do you guys manage that cash flow projections? Curious.
well, I don't know that there's a monthly situation. It's kind of on a contract by contract basis.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I guess just to stay on borrowing, I mean, we have definitely been borrowing more, say, the last 3 years than we did before. And I know you've presented us with the whole summary of all of that. And I think this is an example of where, I mean, I'm happy to take some time at some point, but maybe to get together and talk about, where are we, what is the major costs for our borrowing? And is this something we should just write into the budget, that this is where it's going? Or are there some controls we can put in place to start to, because I was looking at our history of borrowing, and in 2014, there was a bond of about 3.2 million, then 2016, 4.7, 2018, 3.3, and then 2021, 4 million, 22, 2.5 million, and last year in fiscal year 23, 9 million.
Mhm.
And again, I just, I think we just can't keep going at the 9 million rate. And I just,
Right. And some
like-
of that could be the spending on those capital projects this year, but some of it could be that it really should have been permanently bonded earlier
Right,
than
right,
that. And
right.
those other years should have been a little bit higher to stagger it out a little more.
But once we've approved something, unless we had a special town meeting to unapprove something, it's
Exactly.
most likely gonna get spent. We just can't always control when, I mean, it's always gonna get borrowed and spent. We just can't always control when exactly it gets borrowed and spent, correct?
Correct.
I mean, that comes up, that sort of brings up the topic of that long list of the previously approved but unissued capital.
Exactly.
spending.
Mhm.
So again, it's beyond this. We're just discussing it right now, but and this has come up before. We have things that are on that list that haven't been actually undertaken for quite a bit of time. So I would just, and I think staff has already done a fair amount of this over the last couple of years, but going back through that list and trying to chip away at things that actually just haven't been utilized. I mean, perhaps they're just perhaps they've been delayed by COVID and
I'm actually working on a big project right now where I'm reviewing all of the capital authorizations to see if there's any rescissions that can be done. If there's any unspent bond proceeds that can just be closed out to the general fund if they're less than 50,000, to just clean it up, maybe make sure we use the older things. Maybe we borrowed money for an FY20 project, for example, and we're spending street improvements. Maybe we were spending on 23 and then we'll have to borrow, but we already have this money. So let's flip it over here to the money that we've already borrowed. So we are working on that project right now.
Okay, that's a great idea. And again, I think it's all about big picture. It's about, I mean, if priorities change, let's take something off that list and say we don't want to be in a situation where we're sort of feel compelled to borrow for something that's no longer a priority. Okay, so that's terrific that you're working on that. Thank you.
Wonderful.
So I'd actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to come full circle to what you started with at the start of the meeting, and I think others mentioned too, but this priority and planning meeting, I'm wondering if, maybe, and I don't know if this would be a joint meeting or a separate meeting, but maybe the finance committee could have the role of sort of starting to think about, okay, where is this in the priorities and what is the approximate cost going to be for X or Y? Because I think, and again, I'm not saying that cost should always be the only basis for whether or not we do something. And again, there's a side of me that, isn't on the finance committee and thinks about, well, what do I want to see in this town? But as a member of the finance committee, I feel like it's my role to sort of say, well, what's it going to cost? So I think that is something, whether it's a joint meeting or we have a separate meeting on our own. I think that is I think that could help in guiding, all the work that Mark and Ally also have to do in preparation for the budget.
Okay, no, I agree. So I mean, maybe to summarize, I think sort of trying to summarize everything that's been said, I would see three things that we've suggested, on a very preliminary basis as potential action steps. I'll use that phrase, which I don't like, but I'll use that phrase to try to make next year's process, well, just to try to get us an earlier insight on the budget for next year and to help us make, well, I think we made informed decisions, but we want to make more informed decisions. So idea one is some increased finance committee participation in the January priority planning session. And that could come in a number of different sort of procedural ways, including us just sort of tuning into the meeting. But I'll run that by Steve and get his thoughts on that. Two is I brought up the very preliminary idea of trying to get a little bit of an earlier look at our projected debt service line item. And Allison will do a little investigations on that just to see what's possible. And again, I'm eyes wide open on the complexity of that and what that involves in terms of people's time, but it would be great to get something at an earlier point in time. And last is what Allison's already doing, and that is she's going through the existing previously approved but unissued bond approvals for capital projects to see if we could trim from that backlist, and just to make just as a way of making sure that we're being as careful as we can on new projects either approved 5, 10, 3 years ago, or the ones that we approved now. So those are 3 items that I recall. Is there anything else that we've missed?
I think I would like to add that if we could get the book a little bit early and not just, Friday before the Monday meeting. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it doesn't have to be, we could start the meetings a week later, and Ally, that doesn't mean you have to get the booklet to us any earlier, but more time to sift through it. Yeah, a weekend is just really rough. So, related to that though, I wonder if, I don't know if it would be possible, and I'm just throwing this out as an idea, but to have a chance to bring the budget to the finance committee, maybe to talk through it, but even before we go into the meetings with all the departments, because I think Madonna brought this up, and I think Milena mentioned it too, that, it's sort of the first time we get to ask questions is when the person who really feels, is so deeply invested in this budget, but it might be helpful for us to have a chance just to look over the budget and have a separate finance committee meeting just to get a handle on it. But I think we could think about that. I'm not saying that has to happen, but it might be a way to sort of help us be more informed when we're sitting in the meetings with the department heads coming in front of us.
I would find it myself very, very helpful if we could do that. Yeah. As a finance committee, getting together and just kind of reviewing it together and sharing our views and ideas. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This could dovetail with a priority planning meeting, right? So.
Right. Yeah. Whichever way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I think those are. I agree. We'll leave that in Mark's court in terms of any tweaks to the timing of the process there. But and thank you for bringing this up. I think from my perspective, my head was exploding after that process. So, it was hard to think about reflecting on it. But as time passed and we've all recovered, it's good to have this conversation. And try to always, everything can always be improved, including everything that we do. Okay. All right, I think that concludes our agenda. I'll move to citizen speak time. Do we have anybody out there who wants to make a comment?
While we're waiting on hands, I just want to remind us about our next meeting. So since hardly any of us can make the next meeting. So,
Right.
yeah. I'm not seeing any hands. And Mark, are you?
Okay.
No, I'm not speaking.
All right. So just a reminder, our town meeting is, if I have it right, it is Monday, May 6th. Do I have that right? Okay.
So I'm sorry, did you do media and citizen speak?
No, no, I didn't. I did citizen speak. Media. I'm just still going through I'm not going through our scheduling issues. So we had that meeting on the calendar for April 19th. It's obviously not going to work. I guess the question is, do we need another meeting prior to the town meeting?
And the town meeting is May
May
6th.
6th.
How do I not
I'm
have
not
it?
sure. I'm not sure that another meeting would be substantive because this was quite substantive as far as reviewing the experience of the budget meetings. Any comments?
Yeah, I guess I'm inclined to agree with Richard. Mark, perhaps I guess the one reason we would need the meeting is if you really need a reserve account approval by a particular date.
Understood. I am aware that the treasurer collector's office is looking for a reserve transfer for postage. I'm not sure how time sensitive it is, but we will be bringing that to you at some
Yeah,
point soon.
no, I went back and forth with Alicia briefly on that
Okay.
just a bit ago, but so it might be something if you could look at that and just get a sense of when that's actually needed. We'll obviously accommodate it if you really need it, but let's wait on that.
That's what-
Anything the 20th or later would be possible on my end.
I mean, May 20th.
April
No,
20th?
anything this month, April 20th or later.
Okay.
Can we
If you
just put
needed
it
a
on hold?
for the budget.
Can we
Yeah,
just put it on hold and, you know, I don't feel we need another meeting unless we need to transfer funds.
I agree. So let's keep it on hold until Mark shoots up a flare that we really need to approve a finance committee reserve transfer, and then we'll do our best to accommodate that as soon as we can.
We do
Sounds
have,
good.
we do have a scheduled May 21st meeting, which I can make that one. So,
All right. Well, again, let's wait and see on that if everyone's okay with that. But I
Well,
know
we
you need to know about it earlier rather than later.
we will need to have, I mean, I'm assuming there'll be the end of year transfers that we have to do, and that has to happen before July 1st, correct? Or June 30th?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
Yes.
okay.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna wait and see on next meeting. Media time. Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second? All right,
Second.
I'm gonna
All in
say,
favor?
okay, I'm gonna assume that by unanimous consent, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.